Welcome to the How to Be Awesome at Your Job podcast.
We all should be feeling some amount of discomfort. And it's not the discomfort alone that impairs performance, is that it's our reaction to discomfort. The overarching goal is not to banish discomfort. The goal is to make it so discomfort does not experienced as a threat and therefore push the fear response. It is possible to create a physical, emotional state in the brain that neutralizes the fear region of the brain.
That's Dr. Marc Schoen. He's an assistant clinical professor at UCLA and a licensed clinical psychologist who specializes in mind-body medicine. He works with elite athletes and executives to help them thrive in high-pressure, competitive, and uncomfortable conditions. Today, he's sharing his best insights for persisting through discomfort and expanding your comfort zone. So you'll learn 1, why we need more and not less discomfort. 2, everyday techniques to build your discomfort tolerance. And 3, the 45-second trick that helps you handle stress better. I'm Pete Makaitis. This is How to Be Awesome at Your Job. And now, here's Dr. Marc Schoen. Marc, welcome.
Yes, very fun to be here.
I'm so excited to dig into your wisdom. I have listened to your book, Your Survival Instinct is Killing You, Retrain Your Brain to Conquer Fear and Build Resilience, twice, partially because I think your voice is so soothing. I guess that's the hypnotist in you. But I would love to kick us off by hearing what's a particularly striking, surprising, counterintuitive discovery you've made about us humans and how we perform best in your many years of working in mind-body medicine.
The biggest discovery, I would say, is that I was trained to believe that performance really had to do with controlling pressure, discomfort. And what I found is that in reality, that's not really what it is that we all should be feeling some amount of discomfort. And it's not the discomfort alone that impairs performance, is that it's our reaction to discomfort. I have a great 2 studies on that, if that's okay to elaborate on. One was a great study done right around the start of the Afghanistan war, where they took 2 groups of people, the general infantry and the special forces, and they subjected them to a very intense, grueling workout. And the hypothesis is that the general infantry would show much higher signs of stress in the body, while the special forces would show very little stress. Well, what they found out is that the special forces actually had a higher stress response than the general infantry. But the difference was they were able to parlay that stress response into productive action and therefore bring down the stress response, while the general infantry continued to hover in that higher level. And that really is something that I have seen in several studies that I've done, whereas we can train people to manage discomfort and pressure better. But it doesn't mean they will report that they're not stressed, but their physiological response shows that they are managing the stress far superior than those who do not receive that kind of training.
That's beautiful. Well, I think we could all use a little bit more of that. Did you say there were 2 studies?
Yeah, that was my main study on it. And then the second study was the Afghanistan study. That was not mine. That was someone else's study. So 2 studies, the Afghanistan study, and the second study was my own. And that was one where I had people who in their everyday life come in, report just the stress levels they're having at work and every day, took blood measures of them, then trained a group into managing the discomfort and the pressure better. And their blood measures, which were cytokine measures called interleukin-6 and tumor necrosis factor, those people that received that kind of training had a far reduced inflammatory response, but they still reported being stressed.
Okay, well, we're going to dig deep into what training consists of. But first, maybe let's hear the big picture in terms of the big message behind your book. Your survival instinct is killing you. Retrain your brain to conquer fear and build resilience. What's the core thesis here?
Core point of it has to do with discomfort. And I think of it this way, is that here we are in this advanced technological society, and it's done a great job of really limiting our discomfort in our lives. But the paradox of it all is that even though we have less discomfort theoretically, we've become far more sensitive to being uncomfortable. So the premise of the book is, okay, how do we learn to manage discomfort without precipitating the fear response, like the fight or flight response?
And that is a powerful message and question, and so rich and apt, I think, for our time. I've also enjoyed Michael Easter's book, The Comfort Crisis, which explores some of these bits as well. You've got a fun word you use frequently in the book. Can you tell us the definition of adjutants? What is that? And tell us a little bit of the story for how it is we've come to find ourselves here in this place with greater comforts and yet less resilience to discomforts.
Yes, I call it the comfort zone dilemma, is that we all strive to be in our comfort zone. And no doubt it feels good to be in the comfort zone, to be a non-stressed organism. But the downside is, if we take refuge in this comfort zone, what we end up doing is actually shrinking our comfort zone, because we become more and more uncomfortable with the idea of getting out of it. And the effect is a lot today. I see so much of this today, is that as this shrunken comfort zone happens, we get many more mental symptoms, particularly phobias, fear of getting on the freeway, fear of flying, fear of closed places, or fear of heights. And so we want to be challenging our comfort zone. If we just fall back into it, we are setting ourselves up for poor performance and many mental symptoms.
Okay. And so what is the concept of adjutants?
So adjutants comes from the word agitation. And I'm very interested in, as our body gets more and more agitated or has adjutants in it, is that we cross a certain sort of high bar, I think of it. And the more adjutants we have that exceeds the high bar, the more we are likely to impair performance and have psychological, physical symptoms. But if we can keep our adjutants below that high bar, we tend to perform well and have no symptoms. But the key point of this is not the absence of adjutants, but rather the well management of adjutants.
And so is agitation the same, adjutants the same as stress and agitation? Or what is the distinction or the core of this concept?
Well, I think of it more as a warming up of the body, heating it up. So we all are theoretically around 98.6 is our basal temperature. And we do okay if we get into the low 99s. We may feel a tiny bit off. But once we start overheating and getting above 100, then our performance is very much affected. So I like adjutants more as a continuum rather than thinking of we're stressed or not stressed.
Okay, certainly. And so then, and for a given stressor, we may very well experience a different internal adjutants response, like whether something gets us really steamed and furious or a little bit like, it's kind of annoying, but I'll shrug it off.
Yeah, I just find it better to refer to that because of that continuum rather than you either have it or don't have it.
All right. Well, can you walk us through the history, the chronology, the narrative of how we found ourselves in this place with lots of comfort and yet a shrinking comfort zone? And you suggest it's not just the smartphone, but this journey starts much earlier.
Yeah, I really think it starts as prehistoric humans, where humans learned they have an instinct to avoid being uncomfortable because the brain is pretty black and white about this. So if we start feeling discomfort, then the brain starts experiencing a threat. So in the early days, obviously, that threat was not enough food or cold or a mountain lion or someone throwing a spear at us. So we learn real quickly to become sensitive to any impending discomfort and threat. And those humans that were capable of being able to respond effectively to that lived a whole bunch longer than those who were more tight beat folks that were, I'll be fine. And they just didn't live long enough to propagate. And so we're a product of worriers and people that are constantly concerned that something bad will happen. So it's natural that we would evolve more and more as a society to want to limit our discomfort because it just feels so much better. But that's the ultimate trap, is that by continuing to pursue this path of greater comfort, which has really come significantly with technological advance, we're losing that discomfort muscle. So it atrophies. So we're less capable of responding to the world. And here's, I think, a wonderful example of this. We are in a world with tremendous amount of psychological resources, and to help people do well and manage resilience and become hardy. But yet, with all of that and all these technological advances, we have more mental illness than ever. And our troops are more likely to die from their own hands than they are from enemy fire. So what's happened is that we as a society have become less hardy, more fearful. And so that's what's happened to us.
That's tricky. And you say that in many ways, the march of technological progress has contributed to that, whether it's microwaves and fast foods and convenient packaged foods. It's like we don't have to sit in even hunger or discomfort for long at all.
So true. And look how quickly we can create perfection, right? And by just tweaking things on the computer, making ourselves look better, sound better, or edit our responses. And not to mention sort of what you were alluded to is the issue of delayed gratification. We don't have to wait long, do we, for gratification anymore. So we don't get uncomfortable in the same way we did in earlier times.
Well, bringing this to careers in particular, could you tell us a story of how this scenario we find ourselves in with a relatively tiny comfort zone has been harmful to someone's career and what they did to turn it around and the cool results they saw on the other side of that training?
One great example was some years ago, I was sent a fellow that wanted to be drafted into the NBA. He was a senior year at the university. And so he knew this is a make it or break it year. And so while he was playing during the year, he was never, by the way, historically a very good free throw maker. He was always around 60%. But now here he is in this last season, and many of the games being nationally televised, is that he'd get to the free throw line and freeze. He would push the ball rather than just be relaxed. And then his percentage went from 66 or 68% into the high 30s. So he was having lots of pressure and then, of course, freezing under the pressure. So I would go to Pauley Pavilion where he would play, And every time he got to the free throw line, the crowd would go, oh no. You just hear this large moan of 15, 17,000 people. So I had him come in and I asked him questions. And what is your memory? And this is so important for the bigger question that you're asking. What's your memory of being under pressure? And his memory was oral reports in school and getting up to do an oral report and being nervous and shaking. And then the kids teasing him about his inability to talk. So now, years later, he goes to the free throw line. It's like going up there for an oral report. And then when the whole crowd starts moaning, it pushes that old button and he freezes up. So that's a good example. So what the solution was is that we couldn't stop the pressure that he was feeling. Didn't want to. What we wanted to do to make it so that the pressure, which is uncomfortable, no longer pushed the fear response.
And how does one make it such that that occurs?
It is possible to create a physical, emotional state in the brain that neutralizes the fear region of the brain. As many of your listeners know, is the amygdala part of the brain. So what we do is put someone under pressure when they're uncomfortable, create this physical state in the brain. Hypnosis is the big way I do it. And it will block the fear response. So now we're having someone be uncomfortable and learn that no fear is associated with it. And that's how it stops. Pure conditioning.
Okay, cool. So hypnosis, neuroconditioning, hypnosis. Okay. And you said you had another story.
Another story is more directly related to business. I see a lot of folks that are young entrepreneurs and have come up with a fabulous concept, made a lot of money, and venture capitalists come in to give them more funding for their company. And it was their idea, their intuitions, their hard work that created the success. But now you have the venture capital people working with someone that's a lot younger. And the entrepreneurs can get very intimidated by these people with their mathematical models, being older, putting pressure on them, second guessing their decisions. And so what happens is they start getting frozen up inside, start second guessing themselves, start losing confidence, start basically bowing to the pressure, which isn't necessarily good because the venture capitalists aren't the ones that created it, nor the ones that made the money. And so we get this dilemma where we have pressure, uncomfortableness, pushing the fear response. And what is the fear response? Mostly is the area of rejection. You think about it, when it comes to performance, if you look at what is the issue, it's usually rejection, judgment, worry, what other people might think, what they might say. When I ask my medical students, what's their biggest fear? And these are super bright medical students at UCLA. What's their biggest fear? Of saying something and embarrassing themselves. And so we get this with these young entrepreneurs, and they buckle under that pressure. So what I do is, again, create the pressure, but make it so it does not push the fear response, so they can respond accordingly, express their opinion, stand up for what they believe.
And in your book, you mentioned that it's very possible to feel two emotions at the same time. You'd say, I feel stressed, worried, concerned, anxious, and also I'm safe. Can you talk about that principle?
Yes. And that goes to that early concept of being able to create a emotional, physical state in the brain that blocks the fear, but yet you can have them feel pressure. So we have a neutral state or a safe state induced by this type of hypnosis. I like to call it hypno meditation. And the real world stress And I also alluded that to that study I gave you, is that, yeah, the people did report plenty of stress in their lives, but physically, there was no trace of it. It's interesting, dynamic. I call it duality, is my term for it.
Yeah. All right. So hypnosis is one way that we can get there. You also lay out 15 strategies to stay cool, calm, and collected. Could you share with us maybe your top 3 favorites for professionals that do a whole lot for folks and yet are pretty easy, a big bang for the buck or ROI?
Yeah, so the overarching goal is not to banish discomfort. The goal is to make it so discomfort does not experienced as a threat and therefore push the fear response. Okay, so then that's the goal of any exercise that we want to do. I have a lot of different ones that push the button, that make us uncomfortable, because it, again, pushes that button of rejection or being judged or being embarrassed and so on. One thing that I've done that to help train myself in this area was to ask people for favors. And that's an uncomfortable thing. And the exercise I did was, and remember, the goal wasn't to get the favor granted. The goal was dealing with the uncomfortableness of asking for the favor. So I would go around and ask people for $100.
Okay.
And of course, virtually everyone would say no.
Virtually.
I actually had one person say yes.
All right.
Of course, I gave it back. But that's really uncomfortable for me to ask that and then justify it, or for people just to say, essentially, screw you, or just ignore me or walk away. That's uncomfortable. But I wanted to give myself practice in that. And that's a great tool. Now, there's different degrees of pushing this button. One is you could put yourself out there. Let's say you're uncomfortable about dancing in front of other people. You could go take dance lessons. Let's say you've always wanted to sing, but you have a terrible voice. Well, you could take some voice lessons. Or very simple, it's so easy for us to just take the same way to drive to work or use our Google Maps. What if we were to try to navigate our way without the help of that? Again, the overarching goal is to feel uncomfortable and learn we can manage it and not get a fear reaction. Another great way is to approach someone that you think is important or very attractive and introduce yourself. All of these things really push that button. And so the goal is to be uncomfortable, but still be able to do it.
And so if we are in the midst of it, feeling super uncomfortable, and we're not sure if we can do it, and we are maybe feeling the fear response getting pushed, what do we do? Do we do some breathing, or what's your pro tip to pulling it off?
Yeah, I have a breath technique. That's what I call it. It's on my website. It's a free download. And it's a way that you can really expediently knock down your heartbeat and blood pressure. It really just takes 45 seconds to create a result. So you can use this as a preface to doing any of these exercises. And all we want to do, we just bring it down below that high bar that I talked about. So we're not so overheated, and then move forward with the task.
Well, Marc, that sounds like 45 seconds well spent. Could you give us a demo on this breath technique?
Yeah, it really is something I developed back in like 1983 in a biofeedback room at Cedars-Sinai when I wasn't allowed to do hypnosis on the medical units. So I had to find a way that would rapidly relax people. So I hooked myself up with all these electrodes and then later ran other people through it, borrowed from here, borrowed from there, took from here to make something really quick. And what I found is that an inhale through the nose,
okay,
just a medium inhale, not having to be a big diaphragmatic breath, just medium. I'll make a sound. but you wouldn't make the sound. It's kind of like this. About that amount. We pause for a second, and then have a pattern of 4 exhales. But the key part of it is to have no inhale between the exhales. So it looks and sounds like this, and the sound of the exhales is important. Here's the inhale. Hold it for a second or so. Start of the exhales. Shh. 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 And the last one, we just release the remaining air. Shh. And then we repeat that 4 times. And it's remarkable if you're measuring someone's blood pressure or heartbeat, how pronounced of an effect that can have.
Oh, right. And so now these exhales, it's like a shh sound,
Yeah.
like we're calming, like telling a child to
Exactly.
hush up now. Like, shh.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and then there's a pause between the shushes. And then, so it's about a medium level of inhale, not like a huge maximum.
Through the nose.
Are we aiming to get mostly out of all of our breath out, or like completely evacuated, or just mostly evacuated? Or does it really not matter?
Yeah, just most of it, but we don't want to deplete ourselves that
Okay.
we're gasping for
Sure.
air. So just a medium amount like that.
And then do we pause after the 4th exhale before the next inhale?
Yeah, a comfortable space between. And as you do the cycles, you slow it down. So you're pausing more between exhales. Oh, and what I learned back in the 80s about this is that it's not the inhale that relaxes us. It's the
Right.
power of the exhale.
That's cool. That's cool. All right. So we've got that breathing. And tell me, when it comes to perhaps physical interventions, whether it's cardiovascular exercises or resistance strength exercises or getting in cold water or walking with a weighted backpack, are there any kind of physical fitnessy things that go a long way in improving our discomfort tolerance?
Well, it's best for us to think about these kind of techniques that I'm talking about, is that we have both discomfort, physical discomfort, and emotional discomfort. And so it is very important to work on our ability to tolerate both of them. And they both affect each other. So obviously, if we're physically less capable, then we're going to be more emotionally uncomfortable, and vice versa. So the more emotionally uncomfortable we are, the less we tolerate physical discomfort. So it makes sense to work on both. And now here's what I like to do, is to challenge myself physically. For example, when I used to run quite a bit, I would run, but meditate on the ability to stay calm and keep my heartbeat at a certain level. Or when I take a sauna and have the temperature like 175, is to see how long I can keep my body cool from sweating. So there's that kind of interplay that we can do.
That's great. All right, well, let's talk about hypnosis for a moment before we wrap up. And so then, for those unfamiliar with hypnosis, could you maybe first share with us some of the best data or studies suggesting that hypnosis is a real thing that's useful beyond our stage amusements?
Yes, it used to be that we thought hypnosis only changed people's perceptions. And so it's just sort of like a surface charge with a battery, that you can charge it a little, but it doesn't seep into the true fabric of what it is. But as we've had more advances, we can truly measure the impact of what it does. And we see that it has a cellular impact and a biochemical impact. I even did one of those studies to show that we can use hypnosis to block the inflammatory response in the body. And that's by measuring cells. So now hypnosis can be seen as having both a psychological and a physical effect. I like it because it's like the difference between a Scud missile and a Patriot missile. It is precise, direct, and much quicker than going in more globally.
Okay. Well, for folks who are jazzed about that as a tool for being more awesome at their jobs, I mean, I guess we could schedule a session with a professional like yourself, or how could we get a taste of this benefits hypnosis might have to offer us?
I would like to offer your listeners a free download where it's a hypnotic set of suggestions, all geared for job performance based on this whole concept of discomfort, threat, fear, and being able to manage discomfort without threat.
Oh, thank you. That sounds beautiful. We appreciate that. We'll make sure to link that in the show notes, etc. Okay, so we got that going for us. And then you mentioned the notion of the precision, like targeting anything. I mean, I've seen a whole boatload of different hypnosis pieces on YouTube for any number of things. What are your thoughts on those? My guess is that the quality and effectiveness varies. Is there any danger in just trying those out, or what are you thinking about these?
I certainly wouldn't try someone's work that isn't credentialed and has significant training in it. So it should be a mental health professional that's done it for a while because it's very powerful, and mishandled can create some bad results. So be careful, selective as to who you allow to do it. And again, most hypnosis can be seen as just trying to deal with changing people's thoughts only. And just like cognitive behavioral therapy, it certainly can work. But if a lot of our behavior is influenced by fear, then it makes far more sense to deal with that part of the brain where it is centered in this limbic part of the brain. So I like using hypnosis to go directly at those limbic areas, such as the fear center, such as the pleasure center, the sleep center, and so on. And so you can use hypnosis in a superficial way, or you can use it in a much more profound way. Because to me, if we don't deal directly with the fear response, no matter what we tell ourselves consciously, it's just not going to hold.
All right. And maybe I'd love to get your, we'll do your hot takes. Well, I saw a YouTube video where they quickly said underrated, overrated for all sorts of like health and fitness interventions. So let me get your hot takes here. The good doctor, Marc Schoen in the house. Hypnosis for, if I would like, I'm just going to put out some scenarios and say, could hypnosis be useful for this? Maybe say yes, no, or a little would be the three options, if I may. We'll say, I crave cigarettes and I'd like to crave them less. Is hypnosis useful for that?
A little.
Okay. I get scared when I'm asking for referrals or feedback, and I'd like to feel less scared.
Very positive. Good.
Okay. I'd like to sleep longer and better with less interruption.
Good.
I would like to stop eating as many cookies, candies, sweets, and diet more disciplinedly.
A little.
I would like to be more assertive in telling my team my expectations for them and how they can improve.
Good.
I often find myself procrastinating and putting off the hard, uncomfortable thing and doing easier tasks like email.
That's a mixed one. So I have to say a little, but possibly good. It depends what's the source of the procrastination. A lot of people just come into the world wired as a procrastinator. And those folks, you can slightly modify it. There are a group of people that are procrastinators that's totally out of fear.
Okay.
That can be modified that way.
And I find myself, I just get so distracted. I sit down to do a thing and then I find myself on the news or social media or shopping minutes later.
Not necessarily a good one either. Just a little bit of an effect.
All right. Anything else I should have mentioned, Marc?
No, you did a great job. And you notice where I said just a little tend to be those things which are more addictive in nature. That hypnosis is just a medium. It's a single. It's not a triple or a home run for addictions.
All right. Well, Marc, tell me anything else you want to make sure to mention before we hear about some of your favorite things.
The thing I say is just a summary statement is that in reality, what a lot of people say, what doesn't kill me strengthens me. It's really more this. It's not the adversity that makes us stronger. It really is our effective management of adversity that makes us stronger and more resilient. That is the key part of this.
Oh, that's good. Thank you. Big thanks to Marc for sharing his wisdom with us, and big thanks to our sponsors. Check them out. And big thanks to our sponsor, Acorns. Acorns makes it easy to start automatically saving and investing for your future. You don't need a lot of money or expertise to invest with Acorns. In fact, you can get started with just your spare change. Acorns recommends an expert-built portfolio that fits you and your money goals, then automatically invests your money for you. NerdWallet.com, whom I love on these sorts of matters, gives Acorns a whopping 4.7 stars and says, quote, if you want to make the most of your spare change, there's no better place to do that than Acorns. Head to acorns.com/awesome or download the Acorns app to start saving and investing for your future today. And we got a legal disclaimer here. It may not be representative of all clients. Tier 1 compensation provided. Compensation provides an incentive to positively promote Acorns. View important disclosures at acorns.com/awesome. Investing involves risk, including the loss of principal. Please consider your objectives, risk tolerance, and Acorns' fees before investing. Acorns Advisors LLC, Acorns, is an SEC-registered investment advisor. Brokerage services are provided to clients of Acorns by Acorns Securities LLC, member FINRA/SIPC. For more information, visit acorns.com. One sponsor to check out is Storyworth. Whenever I'm thinking about meaningful Father's Day gifts, Storyworth leaps to mind. Storyworth helps you preserve precious memories and stories from your father for years to come. Each week, Storyworth emails your loved ones a thought-provoking question that you get to help pick, such as, what's the bravest thing you've ever done? I personally love the prompt so much that I have refreshed Storyworth's questions page many times looking for more. Storyworth makes the writing process super quick and easy. All your loved one needs to do is respond to that email with a story, and then you get a quick copy of that. And after a year of this fun, Storyworth compiles your loved one's stories and photos into a beautiful keepsake hardcover book that you'll be able to share and revisit for generations to come. Families love Storyworth so much, they've got 25,000 five-star reviews on Trustpilot and have millions of stories preserved. So give all the fathers in your life a unique, heartfelt gift they'll all cherish for years. Storyworth. Right now, you can save $10 on your first purchase when you go to storyworth.com/awesome. That's storyworth.com/awesome to save $10 on your first purchase. One sponsor to check out is Harvard Business Review. This brilliant magazine, published at hbr.org, is the leading destination for smart management thinking. Fun fact, HBR has been mentioned in 108 episodes of the show. That's because HBR has great stuff that comes up often. They've got explainer videos, podcasts, real-world case studies, and much more. I think of HBR each night that I put on my special orange glasses. Their article, Will Blue Light Glasses Improve Your Sleep?, revealed that those who wore them reported better sleep and a 7% improvement in work performance as compared to those who wore the sham glasses. So I cite HBR anytime anyone tells me that I look silly wearing them. Now, much of HBR's content is available for free when you sign up at their site. Subscriptions that get you unlimited content cost $10 a month. If you visit hbr.org/subscriptions and enter the promo code AWESOME, you can save 10% off of that subscription. Again, to save 10% off of your HBR subscription, go to www.hbr.org/subscriptions and enter the promo code AWESOME. Well, now could you share a favorite quote, something you find inspiring?
One I always like was something that Lance Armstrong had said when he was the Olympic athlete. It's something along the lines like, pain is temporary, but quitting is forever. That was a good one. And there was an old time when, God knows if I'm saying it correctly, was something along the lines, that we don't really want to judge someone based on the stage or position in life, but rather judge someone on the obstacles they have overcome. I like that one. I don't know who said that, but.
And a favorite book?
I love this book called The Untethered Soul.
All right. And a favorite tool, something you use to be awesome at your job?
I use that breath technique that I talked to you about. I've actually used it several key times in my life when I'd always had historically low blood pressure. And then there came a time when I was around 36, it elevated to become 160 over 100 instead of 90 over 60. And I thought, no, I don't want this to happen. I want to see if I can retrain my body to run cooler. And I used that technique, that breath technique, to reset my blood pressure. Now, I never got to 90 over 60 again, but I got to now, which is generally 110 over 75. So I use that technique to make sure I stay in that cool zone, because it's so easy in our world, like we've talked about, to get pretty activated.
All right. And a favorite habit?
I do self-hypnosis meditation 1 to 2 times a day. That is such a incredible way to keep our body in the zone. Because as we get older, it would seem like it shouldn't be this, but as we get older, it takes more work to stay in that zone.
Well, and I'm curious, within that self-hypnosis, are there a couple key messages or suggestions that you think really hit home and bring a lot of the result?
If I had to say a core feeling, it's a belief, but it's a feeling, is that when I looked over my life, I have not had an absence of bad or tough things happen, but I've been very fortunate that ultimately it all resolved favorably, with a few exceptions here and there. So what I get to is a place of trust and faith and confidence that no matter how tough something is, I will ultimately have the resources to manage it effectively. So I'm just going to trust and let this feeling of total openness, non-tightness, safety, lightness be the prevailing dominant feeling I'm going to feel in my body. That's what it is.
All right. And is there a key nugget you share with folks that really seems to connect and resonate with them, and they quote back to you often?
It really is this notion that we have talked about, that I can be uncomfortable, I can feel pressure, and nothing bad will happen to me. There's no danger. And that I can persevere and succeed. And then ultimately, most people will say, my ability to hang in that place of fire is where the greatest results happen.
All right. And if folks want to learn more or get in touch, where would you point them?
I would have folks to feel free to look at my website. It's my name, Marc Schoen, MarcSchoen.com. You can find out more about me. I will have the downloads that I've referenced already there under the product section, but it'll give you an overview of my work.
And do you have a final challenge or call to action for folks looking to be awesome at their jobs?
I would really, really encourage people to challenge their discomfort zones, to push against that key thing I've said about rejection and judgment. And even though our tendency is to want to limit our losses, some people call that the negativity bias, often the probabilities of success are actually higher than the probabilities of failure. And so I would recommend really pushing that and being uncomfortable, going in there and just challenging. I can hang in here, persevere, and succeed.
Beautiful. Well, Marc, this was a great time. Thank you. And I wish you the very best.
Many thanks. Enjoyed being here.
Marc shared so many good insights. I'll zero in on 2. First, that breathing technique. Boy, does it work. I will tell you, I am a fan of breathing. I guess all humans are. We must do it to live. But I have just been notified by Apple that my Breathwork app subscription is being renewed. I pay for a breathing app on my phone. And so I like doing different breathing approaches and seeing the impact they make. And I'll tell you, I see on my Garmin watch, when I do that Schoen breathing thing, it does drop my heart rate, it seems, faster than all the other things that I've tried. So sign me up as a fan there. I see the beats per minute dropping on my Garmin watch quickly when I do it. So definitely something to put in the back pocket, your repertoire, when you need that. Also, with regard to the hypnotizing stuff, we have linked in there video of the Spiegel eye roll test to show you how it's done, as well as an image you can reference to grade how you did with your eye roll test. You can take a photo with your phone and see just how hypnotizable you are, because it's pretty cool stuff that you can know very quickly, hey, just how hypnotizable am I? And if you are highly hypnotizable, then you've got a power tool that you can use for all sorts of cool things to great or modest effect in different scenarios, as Marc shared with us. So much good stuff. If you want to see a summary write-up of the actionable wisdom, please sign up for the Gold Nugget emails. That's found at awesomeatyourjob.com. You'll see what Marc had to say, as well as unlock the whole archive, the vault of 957 of these summary write-ups via the Gold Nuggets at awesomeatyourjob.com. And if you want to see the show notes and links to the eye roll test and other goodies, that's found again at awesomeatyourjob.com/EP957. Hope to catch you next time, and peace.
Thanks for listening. To get the most out of the show, we recommend 2 key things. First, check out the extra resources at awesomeatyourjob.com. You can find this episode's transcript and links, as well as the perfect episode for your situation. You can search the full-text transcripts of hundreds of episodes or explore episodes tagged by topic and competency covered. Second, subscribe to the podcast and get future episodes automatically. You can subscribe by telling Siri and several other smartphones and speakers, subscribe to the How to Be Awesome at Your Job podcast, or by tapping subscribe in your podcast player of choice. If you'd like some extra help figuring out podcasts and how subscriptions work, visit awesomeatyourjob.com/subscribe for guidance. Hope to catch you on the next episode of How to Be Awesome at Your Job.